Welcome to Place of Work, the podcast where we explore how design, engineering and construction shapes the way we feel and connect in our workplace. I'm your host, Zoe Yakubu-Sam, Senior Workplace Strategist. Today we're tuning into the workplace through a different sense, sound. Not the music we listen to, but the background buzz, the echo in the meeting room, or the quiet hum that helps us focus. Joining me is Mariana Anelli, a Senior Associate Designer here at Moser for EMEA. She's here to share how sound is often overlooked but plays a powerful role in the workplace experience. So, welcome Mariana.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you here.
Yeah, that was a great intro, thank you.
So let's kick off. So what does acoustic comfort mean to you and why does it matter?
That's a great question. I think when we start designing spaces, the first thing that we study is like the envelope, and then we go really quickly into like taking a brief and layouts. Where actually we're now living in a world where everyone is having different ways of life and styles. And I think we need to start thinking about how people move through spaces, what energy they bring into spaces, and then hence what sound needs to go with whatever you're experiencing in a space. So I guess that's the starting point, just trying to pan out how is that journey from beginning to an end is gonna sound like.
Mm-hmm. So where do you start?
Yeah, I guess we start defining what does that sound of comfort means to the client that we are kind of like studying at the moment. Are they a quiet type of focus, heads down type of business, or are they more lively, sort of collaboration and community type? What is that they want to create? What's the culture? I guess all those questions that you probably helped me defining at the very beginning of the project on doing brief stage. I think that will be the starting point. And then from them, perhaps like a zoning on sound accompanying behavior that we want to put into the space. So maybe what's the entrance going to look like? How do you transition from entrance to the next space and the next one? And what's, I guess, the end of the journey and how people leave? Or we start imagining like day on a lifetime, all those journeys that we always do together as well when we go together, that kind of thing.
What does good look like? Is there a right way or a wrong way to approach?
I guess that's a really good question. Yeah, I guess maybe the wrong thing to approach is that comfort means silence, and the silence is good, because we don't personally think that either of that is right. Different businesses think very differently, and the way that they need to process their tasks and do their day-to-day is very different as well. So maybe complete quietness and stillness is not the best ambience for being actually heads down and focused, because your mind might be wandering more. And if you have some background noise, it might help you to actually channel your inner energy and be like, no, I really need to get this done. So maybe it's a mix of conversational and cultural understanding, and where do you want to go? At the end of the day, everyone is after like a more efficient workplace. So I think with efficiency, there is a lot of other concepts behind that we have to build.
Yeah, and just that's interesting that you mentioned that quiet is not always a good thing, because I think a lot of the time when you think focus, you think quiet, but that could also cause a lot more distraction for some people.
Absolutely. I think even more so now that we are all more informed in terms of neurodivergency and what actual completely stillness makes a human being behave in a very different way to maybe entering a space that you feel like that at least there is a background noise. I think perhaps you become more self-aware, you stop doing tasks that you will normally do, and that will obviously impact your performance. So maybe I think it's fair to say that maybe a quiet moment within a business or a space is needed, but complete quietness, I don't think that's realistic.
And just thinking of the spatial element, so things like, say, ceiling heights, how does that impact the acoustics of a workplace?
Dramatically, like we're starting off like the shell, like what's the type of building, what sort of structure it has. Is it concrete, is it steel structure, does it have drop ceilings, is there enough void? And then maybe when you have like great ceiling heights, it's all about how much is the sound traveling. So that travel distance helps the sound become less, it dissipates, it becomes less strong.
Yeah.
It can bounce against more surfaces because you have more space. So that obviously helps mitigating that. So I think, like maybe great ceiling heights are an advantage, although it has maybe risks as well.
And then just thinking about when you walk into a workplace, when you first walk in, what does a good soundscape feel like in an ideal world?
Yeah, in an ideal world, I think I always like to think that it starts before you approach the building, right? Like you're coming to your workplace or visiting a workplace. How does it feel from road, street level, all the noise that a city has? You come into this lobby that helps you transfer from that noise outdoor to the interior. And then after going in, what do you want to find? Like, how do you want to start your day? And I think one of the biggest things in strategy is coffee. Everyone talks about coffee everywhere around the globe. So maybe it's about what goes with coffee.
Yeah.
Is it like a nice, hotely-like ambience with soft lighting, and you feel like you can take your coat off, check yourself in the mirror, have a casual conversation, then leave that space into like your heads down area? I guess it depends on how much space we have to play with. But I think for me, that will be the ideal, like an opportunity to decant from outside and take a breath. Yeah.
It's so interesting because when you think about coming from the outside to the inside of a building, it's so transitional, and there's so many different senses associated with the journey from home to the workplace.
Agree. Yeah. And especially like what type of life do you have at home? Do you, like for me, sometimes I leave the door to walk to the station and I leave a lot of noise with children and the dog and everything, and then it's so quiet to walk. But for other people, might be completely different. Like their home is super quiet and then they go onto the road and walk and it's like, oh my God, all these cars and this noise. For me, that's background noise, but for them, that's noise. So I guess it depends on your brain, your behavior, the type of task that you need to do that day, levels of stress. All of that is like a combination of so many things.
So it's super individual to a particular person, I guess.
I think so. I think obviously there is general rules and things that obviously standards that we have that we can work with that will help guide in what sort of like levels are acceptable in our structure. But there is cultural factors, there is personality factors, and nowadays we're talking about lifestyles, not only work styles. So I think all of that is just so important. Yeah.
So let's talk examples. You mentioned work styles. So are there any good examples of how sound design has impacted different work styles and supported how different people work?
Yeah, I'll give you an old one. We had a client a while back in Dublin. They are a tech company, Informatica. And they had a couple of floors that we did in phases. So when we finished the first floor, for the open plan, we decided to put like baffles above the desks, so vertical sort of baffles. And they were like, there was this beautiful system that had lighting integrated to it, so it felt like the perfect answer for it. When the second project came in, we actually had some feedback that the first project was quite noisy, and it suited the sales team sitting on that floor. But for this other floor, we decided instead of just doing the same sort of solution, and because they were quite industrial in terms of look and feel, we decided to go horizontal. And depending obviously on the size and the gaps in between the panels, you will have different configurations but different results. And it turned out quite interestingly that the horizontal baffles were more successful in mitigating that extra reverberation in the open plan. So that was, I guess, very early on in my career was an early, like a really nice discovery to learn from. And I guess the other example, an easy one, could be our own London studio. We have a fantastic ground floor space. Ceiling heights are really, really great as well. So to slab is more than 4 meters. And we did keep our sort of like corporate suspended ceiling. But that great height of like 3.2, which is quite unusual in Europe to find a building that is such a great ceiling height, it does help, I think, especially in the open plan, to make us feel like we can be as noisy and as full as we want, but it's not really having an impact on the tasks that every single person is doing individually. maybe, yes, we added different ceiling heights and different ceiling treatments. Even in the open plan, we have some corridors with baffles and bulkheads, and we obviously have furniture and plants that help. But I think we were really lucky with the ceiling height, yeah.
It's interesting because it sounds like one size doesn't fit all.
Yeah.
It has to be very tailored to the people that are actually using the space.
Yeah, and I guess maybe that's a great way that we can work really integrated is we always need to second guess what we learned the last time. It's not a recipe, and it might be because X, Y, or Y factor, like we need to take that into consideration. Yeah.
And just thinking about behaviors, I can imagine how acoustics and behaviors link together. How can acoustic design impact the sort of behaviors in the workplace?
Yeah, maybe again with the London office, I think we created that sort of like focus area. It's not a quiet area. It's not to go and hide, but it's just to allow people to actually come to the office and not be disturbed. And I think kind of like in the process of designing that, we decided that it was not to be a room segregated. It needed to feel part of the open plan. So I think quite successfully with like a few curtains, a few visual aids and rules that you guys put in place, I feel like it's changed the behavior of even like the entire demographic of people that use the space. At the beginning, maybe of the year when we opened the office, it wasn't really, the rules were not obeyed very well. Yeah. But I think right now people are actually appreciating that if I don't disturb, they won't disturb me. And actually it's a great place to have heads down, 2 hours, I just need to get this document done. So I feel like that's changed us, which I thought was impossible. So I was quite interested to see for ourselves in our own office, I think. And we all think, obviously, that we have a say on design because this is what we do.
And it's cool because it's not an enclosed space, but it still encourages those behaviors. So that's a combination of acoustics, but also changing behaviors, change management, etc., and all of that coming together.
Agree. Yes. I think, that was a great moment coming together, all the work that we did for months, just actually seeing that research data and putting all of these things together with like design and interior design actually is fruitful. And maybe like on the opposite end, gather like the arrival space that we have also feels like people feel like they can be a bit more noisy and social no matter what's happening. And I can see people taking calls from the dining tables and they don't seem to mind. So I guess it's like being in a cafe. So that's like the polar opposite maybe.
And just looking at decisions, what are some small things that can have a big impact when it comes to acoustic design?
I feel like that could empower so many people as well to maybe like find quick solutions. I think if you look at everything that takes a space in your space, that is doing something. Sound is bouncing against it. So if you have furniture, plants, curtains, if you want to drop a feature ceiling that maybe like has some extra space in between the previous ceiling and that is hanging, all of that helps with at least with the reverberation. So the sound will have more surfaces to bounce off, and it will therefore become weaker as it bounces and bounces. Artwork as well, we could do simple measures like you could do a version of acoustic backed artwork, and that also takes another level of like sound off, or having screens in between desks or furniture. We did like end of desk rows cabinets with plants on top, and the plants, we wanted them quite high. I think all of that has a massive impact that I think if you walk in the studio right now, you can feel it. Actually, the floor, when you walk around the open plan, you can feel like your heels, if you wear heels, they are not so powerful, they're not resounding everywhere. It's because we added an acoustic backing. So I think simple things like that will have a very noticeable effect on the normal human being. And then beyond that, you can get very technical. We could do void baffles. We could make sure that the doors and the rooms are built in the right way and they have acoustic seals, etc. So, but I think simplicity on things that we know you can buy off the shelf is very successful anyway.
And that's interesting because a lot of these things are things that you don't necessarily think of when you think about acoustics. they're just in the office.
They are,
Yeah.
and yeah, they just don't think they're doing nothing except for maybe like having a function, but actually they have maybe secondary or even third. I also think, you know, like the things about, you also have to think about how all the people that will come to the office will behave. I think we in the studio, we know that we have a very active group. People walk quite a lot, so deciding not to do carpet in the open plan was a big deal. But if we didn't do that, what else could we do to make sure that we wouldn't hear the hardness of people walking constantly up and down? And I think that's maybe the main thing. With a lot of glazing and a lot of solid walls, what else is there to help?
Yeah. So we've spoken about, you know, the open plan, desking, but also having quiet areas. But what else is there? Say if you don't want to sit in the open plan area, you don't really want to go into a quiet area, what other features in the workplace can actually support different ways of working?
Yeah, I guess maybe we touch again on in our own office. I guess we always talk about choice.
Yeah.
But maybe choice about what, like, or what sort of activities are you supporting? If we are saying that we want to make sure that people come to the office 4 days a week minimum, then we need to also provide that other side of comfort, which is, I have a rule, 2 to 3 typical typologies, very accessible from wherever you sit. And I feel like if you don't have those 2 to 3 nearby, there's not enough choice for all my activities, and I will either waste time or maybe be less efficient. So maybe if you have an open plan, you could break the desks after banks of 6 or 8, maybe just break them with like a collaboration table, so there is like a different setting nearby. Maybe phone booths, because people are doing calls most of the time these days. So maybe they can step away from the desk every now and then to another type of phone call. So you feel like you have 2 different varieties nearby. And on the central spine, in that kind of like leftover space that we have next to the corridor, the idea for that was to try out different furniture. For now, we have a high table and access to meeting rooms all the way through. So maybe that is another thing, because those elements will also be furniture elements. They will occupy space. They might be padded in and out. There's like really great solutions out there on furniture also that are accessible. But maybe it's also that taking that behavior that we were talking about at the beginning for our own team. We knew what those extra behaviors needed to be. So taking that into consideration to add next to all of these spaces. So maybe, I think for me that rule has worked really well. Having them inside, it means that they exist. Like the way that we put the phone booths together, like if we wanted people to work from that cafe space, you have to have a phone booth. Otherwise, they will have to walk all the way back. And that means those tables will be underutilized.
And people are lazy. If it's not close by, you're not going to use it.
It's natural, right? You see it when you're walking around on streets. Like if the pavement is square, you ended up seeing like how the grass gets rounded because people walk through it. I think human behavior is natural, and you only have to learn from it and try and follow what are the simplistic things that you could do, small tweaks maybe. But if it's natural, it feels natural.
So as a strategist, you know we love research, but just thinking about acoustics and sound, how do you know you've got it right? How do you assess post-occupancy, what that looks like?
Yeah, I think that's so important, actually. I think a benchmark to begin with, what are we trying to define or create? Some clients have their own DB rating requirements or NR ratings, or maybe they want to achieve a sustainable accreditation that might help you guiding to a certain extent, like so setting up a brief somehow. And after that, I mean, we've done post-occupational surveys we did it for our own office. We've done it for a few clients. So getting feedback is a really valuable tool. I guess if you don't have the benchmark, you can't really create this feedback loop. So I think those 2 things go hand in hand. And we do have a lot of repeated relationships with clients. So maybe hearing firsthand of them what worked, what didn't work is also quite useful. So maybe maintaining that relationship to learn from what you did.
So just thinking about your clients, what is the one thing that you wish that they understood about acoustics?
I guess just to be mindful that that will be something that needs to be weaved within the brief from the beginning. It can't be an afterthought, a side effect, or an incidental, hey, this didn't work, let's fix it. I think even having access, if you are not well defined on what you have to do, you can even have like a really good workshop with acoustic consultants that we have in our team, just to try and figure out what are the key things. Because most of the time is maybe misinformation. We don't really understand what acoustic design means. We think it's an add-on and we can live without, and actually integrating that into the design and the early stage design will be so much beneficial. So from the beginning, planning and making sure that you are doing the right things, having the right adjacencies, creating the right soundscape. If you have all of that, it has to be a success towards the end, because everything clicks together and forms together. If you miss that, yes, there is ways to retrofit, but it's not ideal.
Yeah. So the earlier the better, weaving it into the strategy.
Yeah. We can tap on anything. We can have small conversations. It doesn't have to be a massive consultancy piece with thousands of dollars or pounds, wherever you are in the world. I think it just needs a good conversation to understand what they need.
So thanks so much, Mariana, for joining us today. It's been a really insightful conversation.
Same. Thank you for having me.
If today's episode got you thinking about your workspace and acoustic design, we have lots more on our website, so make sure to check that out. Stay tuned for the next episode.